Okay? So we were discussing, in our last shiur, in the last class, we were discussing about the idea of how Hashem has a nachas from two completely different styles of people, right? We gave the example of food, that a person can enjoy sweet cake, gummy bears, like you were saying, right? On the other hand, he can enjoy Chinese food, sushi, whatever, and they're not contradictory tastes. In fact, they're very, very much not contradictory. It's not like you like one thing better than the other. No one's going to say, oh, I like cake better than Chinese food. You could say, I like Japanese food better than Chinese food, or Chinese food better than Japanese food, because they're in the same category. But everyone likes sweet things, and everyone likes spicy, sour types of things, right? So the Alter Rebbe here is comparing these two tastes to two different types of people. Tzaddikim. Tzaddikim are people that we know never make mistakes. Why do they never make mistakes? Because they don't have a Yetzer Hara. Exactly. Right? Ki hargu b'tainis, like it says in the first chapter about David HaMelech, that he killed his Yetzer Hara through fasting. Right? In other words, they just don't have at all an urge the way a normal human being has an urge. Right? We all have all these negative thoughts popping up into our minds, and all these desires and all these things that are pushing us and challenging us on a day-to-day basis. So a tzaddik does not have that. That's not where he's holding. Therefore, the avoda that he does is very special to Hashem. But that specialness, if you can use that word, right, is based on the paradigm of something sweet. It's delicious. No one's going to say a chocolate cake is not delicious. It's delicious. It is what it is. On the other hand, Hashem made a different type of person, which is what we call the normal people, that are you and I, right? Who we have our difficulties, we have our challenges, we have our desires. And what Hashem wants from us is to go beyond ourselves, to be able to control ourselves, to be able to do more than we think we could do, to accomplish much more than we think is even a possibility for us. That's our avoda. Our avoda is the style of avoda of the Chinese food. Spicy, sour, something that is delicious as well, right? And Hashem wants both of those types. So that's where we're up to in chapter 68. So he says like this. Let's read from 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down from the top of the page. Just like with different delicious foods, physical foods, derech mashal. Yesh shnei minei ma'adanim. There are two different types. There is one type which is food that is sweet, very, very delicious, naturally delicious. Ice cream, cake, right? Candy. These things are very delicious to everyone. Everyone loves the way they taste, right? On the other hand, you have a different type of food. You have food that is spicy, which is sour. Now, it's interesting that he used the example of the sweet taste for a tzaddik and the idea of something that is spicy or sour for a beinoni, for the wannabe beinoni, we should call it, really. Why? Because something that's sweet, you don't have to do anything to it. You make a cake, you put some sugar in, or you put maple syrup if you're a little bit more healthy, right? Or you put honey in, and that's it, it's fine, this is the way it is. If you want to make a food that, like a chicken or a fish or something like that, you want to make it into something that's sour or spicy, you have to marinate it. It has to change, you have to marinate it. Of course, you could always put on Tabasco sauce or something spicy like that, some sort of hot sauce, right? But that's not really the taste of the actual food itself. If you want to make something really delicious in terms of making it spicy or sour, you need to marinate it. It needs to change from the etzem, from its inside. And that's like us, the wannabe beinonis, the wannabe people that are able to control ourselves. Because really, we have a desire not to control ourselves. It's much easier. Our Nefesh Bahamiyas gives us a whole list of reasons why we should just follow after whatever our heart desires, right? And our brain is trying to say, no, this is not what we should be doing. So it requires effort, it requires change, it requires putting oneself into it. And that's why the example of spicy or sour is used for the wannabe beinoni. Right, hated, right, that they're spiced and they're fixed very well. Until they're made into a food that is delicious, that is like very satisfying.
Technical difficulties.
Please stand by.
And it still works.
Okay, we're still on? We're good? Okay. Okay, so keep on going. So he says like this. He says, V'zeh she'amar ha'kosov ki pal Hashem l'ma'anehu v'gam rasha l'yom ra'ah. That Hashem does for his doing, and even the rasha in the day of his evil. Perushi yishu merisho. What is the idea here? That he should turn away from his evil. V'yaseh harasha lo yoim v'or. Right, and he should make from his evil the idea of something that is light, to change. In other words, like we said from the beginning, that Iyuv, we said in the first chapter, he said, when he quoted from Bava Basra, Perek Aleph, Ribono shel ha'olam barasa tzadikim barasa rishayim, that you created rishayim. And so Alter Rebbe asked her, what does it mean that he created rishayim? What does that mean? Hashem wants to create rishayim? So the answer is that no, Hashem created people with the desire to do the wrong thing. But he also gave us the strength and the power within ourselves to conquer it. How? By turning it over to the light, to changing it to daytime, to changing it to a difference, to making it good. And that's our job. And like it says, like we said in the last page, that once a person does this, once a person bends himself, once a person changes in that way, so what happens is that every step of the way that he's doing it, he's going to cause Hashem's glory to go up in all the worlds, the upper worlds, the lower worlds, in every place. That's his way of bringing light into the world. Now a person has to live with this idea, that he lives with this idea. It's not that it's like this major project, and eventually, one day he'll finish Shas, or one day he'll become a this, or he'll become a that. And then that's when everything will change. That's not what the Alter Rebbe is saying here. The Alter Rebbe is saying here that every day he's going to get a curveball. Not just 100, maybe 200, maybe 1,000. And every day he has to bend from that. He has to change. He has to go away from it. He has to challenge himself, right? It's not natural for most of us to want to sit down and just learn the whole day, or sit down and wake up in the morning, wash Negelvasser, jump out of bed and go to mikveh and go daven and whatever, right? That's not natural. Natural is that I want to hit the snooze button. I want to turn over and sleep. And now it's getting to the winter time, right? I don't want to get out of my bed. It's all calm, it's warm and comfy and whatever. And I'm going to get out of bed. It's going to be freezing. I don't want that, right? That's normal. But to win over oneself is not just winning over oneself. It's changing the whole existence. That's what he's trying to say here. And a person has to, it's not so easy to internalize that thought. Because most of the time we're thinking, what's the difference? Who cares? They really care. I'm on time, not on time. I'm going to learn a little extra. I'm not going to learn a little extra. I'm going to help this little old lady cross the street, not help this little old lady cross the street. What does it really matter anyway? Does it really matter what I do? And the answer is yes. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. He's quoting from the Zohar and saying, yes, it matters. Helping that little old lady across the street is changing the world. In the same way as getting out of bed when the alarm clock strikes, it's changing the world. That's the point that he's trying to bring out here. Now, what the Alter Rebbe says here is a very interesting point. He starts segueing into a different direction here. And what he's going to bring up here is, up until now, we've been talking about controlling ourselves from doing the wrong thing. But what about from things that are permissible? Things that you're allowed to do. What about that? So the Alter Rebbe is going to launch into a whole discussion here that the objective is that even with things that are totally permissible, 100% kosher, the question is, can I lift myself above it? That I'm not being dragged around by my nefesh bahamis, even for things that are permissible. It's not telling me to go to Pizza Hut or something like that that's not kosher. Instead, it's telling me go to Shimmy's Pizza, whatever, and just devour everything that you see inside there. Oh, it's kosher, so why not? And you're right. They're obviously going to Shimmy's Pizza, right? If it even exists, I don't know if it exists, but whatever, right? Is obviously much better than going to Pizza Hut, which is not kosher. There's no question about that. But now the Alter Rebbe takes it to the next level and says, what about, can you get to the point in yourself that you're no longer being dragged around by your nefesh bahamis, even to go after kosher things? In other words, it's very easy to say, well, it's kosher, so why not? But really, it could be, as we go deeper into our investigation of how our beings, so to speak, work, we could see that really it's just a desire, it's just a taiva, and it's just a nefesh bahami is just dragging us around by the nose. And that's what he says. Below, not just this, even things that are completely permissible. Kol ma she'ha'adam zoveach yitzaro. And he uses the words intentionally. A person who's able to sacrifice his yetzer hara. Zoveach means like from the word to sacrifice, like to bring a korban. Right? He's going to sacrifice his yetzer hara. Afilu sha'akala, even for a little bit of time. And he has intention. The reason why I'm doing this is just to bend my yetzer hara, to bend the sitra achar that's inside of me, that's lodged in the left side of my heart. Kagon shechafetz le'achol. Like, for example, a person wants to have lunch, one person wants to have dinner, a person wants to have breakfast, whatever. Umi achar sudaso. And he decides, you know what, I'm not going to eat right this second. Ad la'achar shah, he puts it aside for an hour or pachot or less, but instead he learns, right? Like you guys do over here. That instead of running downstairs to eat lunch, you guys sit around and you do a mishnah. I don't know, one mishnah, two mishnahs, whatever it is. It's a very nice thing. But this is exactly what he's saying here. I remember my rabbi in Kfar Chabad used to say, like, instead you have a whole plate of food in front of you. So put down your fork for a second. You don't have to put it down for 3 hours. Put it down for a second and then pick up your fork and eat. In other words, just to start to tame the animal inside of me. The animal inside of me wants to just, be hefker, do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants, right? And by me putting down my fork, I'm saying, I'm in control. I'm in control here. You think you're in control? I'm in control. That little act, as seemingly irrelevant as it looks on the outside, what the Alter Rebbe is saying here is that it causes magnitudes of good to go up in the world. Which is hard for me to at least to perceive and to actually digest. But that's what the Alter Rebbe is saying here. That's what's happening here, right? He's not saying don't eat lunch. He's saying take a minute break from lunch before you dive in. At that moment, that 1 minute breaks the nefesh bahamis. That 10 seconds even breaks the nefesh bahamis. That's what he's saying. Like it says in the Gemara, he brings a Gemara that with an example. What's the example? The example is that in the times of the Gemara, right, everyone would eat their meal in the 4th hour of the day. So that's like around 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever, right? That would be their meal. However, Talmidei Chachamim would eat the meal, it's the 6th hour, 12 o'clock instead. They're eating the same meal, what's the big deal? No, because they pushed it off. Because they pushed it off, this is the idea. They would cause themselves to be hungry for the extra 2 hours for this purpose. In other words, but even despite the fact that after they finish the Suda, they're gonna eat anyway. In other words, it's not, after they finish the Suda, they're gonna learn anyway. It's not like they're deciding they're only going to learn until they eat. No, they're planning to learn the whole day anyway. So you could say to yourself, what's the difference if they eat at 10 o'clock or they eat at 12 o'clock? Like, who cares? If they eat at 10 o'clock, so then they'll eat until 10:30, and then they'll start learning again from 10:30 on. Instead, they're going to eat until they're going to learn until 12. Then what happens after they learn until 12? So then what happens is that they're going to eat, and then again. they're going to learn the rest of the day. So what's the difference? So that's what he's saying here. What he's saying here is that it is a difference. There's a difference. And when a person does it from the point of view of that kavanah, so then that causes a tremendous amount of joy upstairs. And it causes a tremendous amount of light to go into the world. And then he says even further, so he says a very interesting point. We'll end with this point. He says, and the Rebbe actually brought it a lot of times, the Rebbe very much encouraged us not to fast. Right? For our generation, the way of doing things is not to fast. Right? Many earlier generations, that was their way they conducted themselves. But for our generation, the Rebbe said it's not a good idea for fast because we're not so strong. We're just not such strong people like in the olden days, and therefore it's going to mess up more than it's going to accomplish. Right? If let's say you're a student in yeshiva and you decide you're fasting, and therefore you can't pay attention to anything you're supposed to be learning. So what does it help? So great, you fasted, mazel tov. But you didn't learn anything. You didn't learn the Gemara that day. You didn't learn the Chassidus that day. So what did you couldn't daven with a straight head that day. You couldn't do anything. So great, mazel tov that you fasted. But you accomplished nothing. You lost more than you gained. Right? That's basically the concept of losing more than you gain. Right? So on the other hand, what the Rebbe did say was he recommended that people should try to stop talking so much. In other words, you really want to say something, you can't. Stop talking. You don't have to talk. You don't have to discuss it so much. You don't have to just let out everything that's in your head. Right? Stop talking. Tainis dibur. Doesn't mean literally a tainis dibur that you don't talk for 24 hours. But it just means that you're able to control yourself. You don't have to talk. You don't have to say everything that comes into your mind. That this is a similar idea. That you're accomplishing the same amount, and even more so because most people, right, when they fast, they become a little bit arrogant. They say, look at me, did you know, I fast on Monday and Thursday. Oh, I didn't mean to tell anyone I'm fasting. Oh, did I say I fast Monday and Thursday? Oh, pretend like you didn't hear it, right? Because it makes them feel like they're very, very, righteous and pious and whatever. But when you don't speak what you have in your mind, no one else knows about it. Only you and God. And when it's a real strong desire to say something, and especially to say something that is inappropriate or negative or something like that, and you control yourself, so this is an incredible accomplishment. And therefore, in many ways, it's accomplishing so much more than what we can possibly imagine. Not just on my own personal level of controlling my nefesh bahamis and training my nefesh bahamis and taming my nefesh bahamis, but also in the greater picture of the whole world. All right, we'll pick up from here tomorrow, God willing.